Today I'm going to teach you how to make a honeycomb blanket, just like the one that I'm sharing with you today. So this, you can see, is made out of a bunch of different hexagons of 4 different colors roughly, and I have a nice border around it too. So I'm going to show how to make the individual hexagons, how to attach them together, how to make this border, and then, you know, with a lot of time you can make this fun blanket. So hope you enjoy. So the first step to making our honeycomb blanket is to make those hexagons that I was showing you. So first thing I'm going to do is I have my crochet hook, I have my yarn, and then I'm going to need scissors at the end, but we don't need that quite yet. What I'm going to do first is make a slip knot, put it on my crocheting hook, and then loop my yarn from left to right as I'm holding it on my right hand, and pull that slip knot off, causing this extra loop. And I'm just going to do that 5 more times, so I'm going to have a chain of 6. So now I have this little chain for the beginning of my hexagon, and what I'm going to do is just pick up that last chain, or I'm going to pick up the first chain that I made, like that slip knot originally, with my crocheting hook. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go left to right with my yarn, and now I'm going to take off both of those loops, leaving just the most recent one, and add another additional stitch, picking up the second loop of my chain that's now in a bit of a circle, picking that up and making a loop, adding an additional stitch, and going around doing the same thing. So picking up, adding an additional stitch, picking up, adding an additional stitch, picking up, adding an additional stitch, until I get to the beginning again. And then I'm just going to do the same thing that I've been doing, but now I'm just adding an extra stitch. So I'll pick up 2 stitches, which would be the first stitch and the additional stitch I originally added, and then add an extra stitch. And you're just going to keep on doing this until you get the shape of a hexagon. So as you, even with the first stitch, you can kind of, the first step of going around, you can kind of see that you're beginning to have the shape of a hexagon. And as you just go farther and farther in going around the loop, you'll just add more stitches before you do the additional stitch on the edge. You also, instead of counting how many stitches you do, you can also notice, especially towards the end, as it gets bigger and bigger, it'll look like a hexagon. So anytime you get to a part that looks like a sharp edge, not really sharp, it's yarn, but anytime you get to a part that looks like an edge, you can add that additional stitch. And you keep on going until either it's the same size as your other pieces in your blanket, or you have about 8 stitches on all sides roughly. But once you count the 8 stitches, then you should be roughly ready to go. And this process is basically the whole thing. There are a couple other steps that I'll go through, but once you get a good flow going for making your hexagons, then you're really ready to go. And this is like a perfect thing to do, you know, if you have like a 10 minutes of downtime or so, and you don't want a huge project, even though blankets are pretty long and huge project. But these little hexagons, they're small, easy to kind of just keep like a piece of yarn in your bag, make a bunch of them. When you're done, go to the next yarn, and just like kind of a fun side project, just a little thing to pass the time. And then eventually you'll have so many that you can make a blanket like mine. cool. Let's see how it looks. And it seems to match up pretty well. You can also see like the way that I am tighter in certain areas maybe makes it change shape slightly, but it seems pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is cut and just take that loop, bring it through. I might do that a second time just to really make sure it won't, I won't lose all my stitching, because once that comes undone, then you can easily unravel all of it. So I'll cut that. And here you have one of your hexagons. Now it's time to put your hexagons together. So I have these two hexagons, and what I'm gonna do is just take one side that I think looks pretty even, and just put the good side. So this is the good side and the good side. Put them together. So now you have those edges lined up. I'm gonna do as I usually start with the slip knot. Slip knot. Place it on the crocheting hook. You wanna have a yarn color that's the same color as one of the hexagons that you're using. But I'm just gonna pick up one loop from that side, one loop from my other hexagon. So now I have both of those, and I have my slip knot at the bottom. I'm gonna go left to right, hooking that in, and you can use your slip knot to tighten that hold a little bit. So we have one. So I'm just gonna go again, pick up the second piece. I have loops from both hexagons. Again, do the loop left to right, pull it, and do that same thing all the way. And if things seem to maybe not fit exactly, you can always finagle it a little bit. But hopefully, if you're counting your stitches, it should. When I didn't, they didn't match up as well, so. Now you've come to the edge. You can kind of see how it looks like on this side. You have like a nice little smooth thing. A little bit harder, you can kind of see that line of the yellow. That side. Now it's nice and connected, and what you can do is stop here. If you had another piece, you could continue sewing that. If you had another piece, you could continue knitting if you'd like, or cut it off. And do the same thing that we did to end our crocheting. So I'm just gonna do that twice. Make it a little bit more secure, and then cut both sides. So now you have one part of the hexagon. Yeah, now you have one part of the hexagon. So now we're on to the final part of our hexagon blanket, which is a border. And so we're gonna do the border all the way around, and then all the way around a second time. And I've already gotten a head start of doing it the first way around. So I'm just gonna basically do the same type of stitches that we've been doing all around. You wanna make sure you have the good side facing you. So I'm just turning this around a little bit so you'll be looking at the back of my blanket. So I'm just gonna be taking my crocheting hook, placing it into one of the loops of one of the little hexagons, wrapping my yarn around the hook, and pulling both of the loops through. Now I have another loop. Continue going through, and basically you just kind of do this all the way. The only part that's different is when you get to the top of a hexagon, and we like that point that is at the top of the hexagon, so I want to try to continue it. So all I'm going to do is pick up the piece from the original hexagon, and then I'm going to basically just make another loop. So I'm just adding another stitch. So I'm just doing another loop, but now I'm only using the one brown part to make it, and just keep on going all the way down. When you get to the part that's between the two hexagons, if you want, you can try to grab all three at once, so you can kind of cut down on a stitch. I will do that the second time around a little bit to make sure that it's nice and pronounced, but not necessary, not required. But yeah, after I'm done with this part, then you'll have a completed blanket, which is exciting. And now with the border complete, you can see I have my finished hexagon blanket. It only took a lot of months to make, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's nice and cozy. I'm excited to, snuggle up with a book and try on my blanket. It's very comfy. It could have been longer, you can make it as long as you want. Just as long as the hexagons are. You can make it in a different shape. I decided to make it in the shape of a hexagon. If you wanted to make it like a traditional blanket in the shape of a rectangle, you would have to do half hexagons at the edges, but I kind of like the shape of a huge hexagon in this honeycomb blanket, and I really like how it turned out, so I hope you like yours too.